Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest videos. Have you ever wondered what timeless secrets a wise elder might share about creating genuine connections in our increasingly disconnected world? Imagine discovering ancient wisdom that could transform how you relate to everyone in your life, from family and friends to colleagues and even strangers. In today's video, we'll explore the profound insights of an 80-year-old mentor who has spent decades studying human connection and relationship building. Stay with us until the end, as these revelations might forever change how you approach conversations and relationships, helping you build deeper, more meaningful bonds with everyone you meet. If you haven't already joined our community, please click the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to receive updates on our latest content. Your support means everything to us. If this video resonates with you, please give it a thumbs up to help others discover these important messages. I'm eager to hear your thoughts. Comment 1 if these insights speak to you, or 0 if you have a different perspective. Now let's begin our journey. Michael's search for connection in the heart of a bustling city where people rushed past each other with eyes glued to screens, lived a man named Michael. Despite being surrounded by hundreds of people every day, he felt profoundly alone. His conversations rarely went beyond surface pleasantries, his relationships felt shallow, and a persistent emptiness lingered in his chest. At 45, Michael had achieved what society deemed success: a thriving career, financial stability, and a comfortable home. Yet something essential was missing. The connections he formed seemed to evaporate as quickly as they appeared. One rainy evening, as Michael sat in a quiet cafe watching people hurry by, a memory surfaced, something his grandfather had mentioned years ago about an elderly teacher living in a small coastal town who understood human connection in a way few others did. If you ever find yourself surrounded by people yet feeling alone, seek her wisdom, his grandfather had advised. With a mixture of skepticism and hope, Michael decided to take a short sabbatical. He packed lightly and set off to find Eleanor, the wise woman his grandfather had spoken of with such reverence. The directions led him to a modest blue cottage perched on a small hill overlooking the sea. Before he could reconsider, the door opened and an elderly woman with bright, kind eyes and silver hair appeared. "The gate isn't locked," she called out with a smile that somehow made Michael feel immediately at ease. "Come in. You've traveled a long way." Michael followed Eleanor into a warm, inviting living room where books lined the walls and comfortable chairs faced each other, positioned, he would later realize, at the perfect angle for conversation. "So," she said, her voice both gentle and direct, "tell me what brings you here." Michael took a deep breath. "I feel disconnected," he admitted, surprised by his own candor. "I'm surrounded by people all day, but I can't remember the last time I felt truly seen or understood. My conversations feel empty, my relationships superficial." Eleanor nodded, studying him with eyes that seemed to see beyond his words. "The art of genuine connection hasn't disappeared," she said, "but it has been forgotten by many. People confuse contact with connection, information with intimacy, and presence with attention." She poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to Michael. "But the good news is that true connection isn't complicated. It's simply been buried under layers of modern distraction and misunderstanding." Michael leaned forward, the warmth of the cup in his hands oddly comforting. "How do we uncover it again?" Eleanor smiled, a knowing look in her wise eyes. "We begin by understanding the difference between being present and being engaged, because presence alone is never enough." Eleanor's wisdom, the 4 pillars of genuine connection. As steam rose from their teacups, Eleanor began sharing what she called the forgotten pillars of human connection. "The first misunderstanding," Eleanor began, "is believing that connection happens automatically when people occupy the same space. But proximity isn't connection, it's merely opportunity." Michael thought about his workplace, how people sat side by side for hours without truly engaging with one another. "I see that every day," he admitted. "We're physically together but mentally elsewhere." Eleanor nodded. "Genuine connection begins with what I call wholehearted presence. Most people give partial attention to others. Their body might be present, but their mind wanders to their to-do list. Their phone keeps pulling their eyes away, or they're already formulating responses instead of truly listening." "The second pillar," Eleanor continued, "is courageous vulnerability. People mistake connection for presenting perfect, polished versions of themselves, but genuine bonds form when we allow ourselves to be seen, really seen. Imperfections and all. Isn't vulnerability risky?" Michael asked, "especially in professional settings." Eleanor's eyes sparkled. "Of course it is. That's what makes it courageous. I'm not suggesting inappropriate oversharing. I'm talking about small, authentic moments. Admitting when you don't know something, sharing a genuine struggle-related to a project, expressing sincere appreciation or showing enthusiasm without worrying about appearing too much. She stood and walked to the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines before selecting one. People don't connect with personas, they connect with people. When you hide behind perfectionism or detachment, you build walls, not bridges. I'd love to hear how these ideas resonate with you so far. If these insights are helping you think differently about your connections, please give this video a thumbs up. If you're new here, consider subscribing to join our community dedicated to building meaningful relationships. The third pillar, Eleanor said as she returned to her seat, is generous listening. Most people listen to respond. They're searching for a place to insert their own stories, advice, or opinions, but genuine connection requires listening to understand. What's the difference? Michael asked. Generous listening means temporarily setting aside your own perspective to fully enter another person's world. It's listening not just for facts, but for feelings, values, and unspoken needs. It's being curious about someone else's experience without immediately filtering it through your own. She gestured toward the window, where two birds were engaged in what looked like an elaborate dance. Watch those birds. See how completely they respond to each other's movements. They're not planning their next move. They're wholly attuned to each other in the present moment. Human connection requires that same quality of attunement. And the fourth pillar, Eleanor continued, is meaningful response. Connection deepens or dissolves based on how we respond to what others share. Yuki, mean like giving good advice? Michael asked. Eleanor shook her head. That's exactly what I don't mean. When someone shares something important, a struggle, a joy, a dream, rushing to fix, minimize, or top their story shuts down connection. A meaningful response acknowledges both the content and the emotion behind what's shared. It validates their experience and conveys, I see you, I hear you, and what you feel matters. These four pillars, wholehearted presence, courageous vulnerability, generous listening, and meaningful response, form the foundation of genuine connection, Eleanor concluded. But they're just the beginning. The modern barriers to connection, breaking through digital walls as morning light streamed through the cottage windows. Michael returned for his second conversation with Eleanor. He'd spent the night reflecting on their discussion, uncomfortably, aware of how often he violated the principles she'd described. The most pervasive barrier is what I call continuous partial attention, Eleanor explained. People think they can meaningfully engage while dividing their focus between a person and their phone, their email, or their internal to-do list. But genuine connection requires full presence, even if for shorter periods. But isn't multitasking necessary these days? There's so much to keep up with. Multitasking is a myth when it comes to meaningful human interaction, Eleanor replied gently. Our brains cannot fully engage in two significant tasks simultaneously. We simply switch rapidly between them, doing neither well. The second major barrier, Eleanor continued, is the illusion of connection through digital means. Social media and texting create the sensation of connection without its substance. They provide contact and information, but often lack the depth that nourishes the human spirit. Are you suggesting we abandon digital communication? Michael asked. Eleanor chuckled. Not at all. Digital tools can enhance connection when used mindfully, but they cannot replace it. Think of it this way. Digital communication is like sending someone ingredients, while real connection is preparing and sharing a meal together. Both have value, but they're not the same experience. The third major barrier is perhaps the most subtle. The pace of modern life leaves little room for the natural rhythm of connection. Genuine bonds require something that has become increasingly scarce, unhurried time. Your support means so much to us. If you're finding these insights valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content on building meaningful connections. Share this video with someone who might benefit from these wisdom teachings, but who has unhurried time anymore, Michael asked, thinking about his packed schedule. Eleanor's eyes crinkled with gentle amusement. Everyone has exactly the same amount of time. The difference lies in what we prioritize. If meaningful connection matters to you, some portion of your time must reflect that priority. The final barrier, Eleanor said, is the most fundamental: fear. People fear rejection, judgment, misunderstanding, and vulnerability. This fear drives us to keep conversations safe, superficial, and ultimately unsatisfying. How do we overcome that fear? Michael asked. Not by eliminating it, that's impossible, but by developing the courage to connect despite it, by remembering that the potential for genuine connection is worth the risk of momentary discomfort. Eleanor stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the ocean. Connection requires courage, the courage to be fully present when distractions call, the courage to be authentic when masks feel safer, the courage to listen deeply when rushing, to respond feels more natural, and the courage to respond meaningfully when cliches would be easier. The art of meaningful conversation, beyond small talk. The following day, Michael and Eleanor walked along the shoreline, the rhythmic sound of waves providing a peaceful backdrop for their conversation. Let's talk about the practical art of conversation. How to move beyond small talk to exchanges that actually matter, Eleanor suggested. I've always struggled with that transition, Michael admitted. Small talk feels safe, but ultimately unfulfilling. Yet deeper conversations can feel awkward or forced, Eleanor nodded. Many people get stuck in permanent small talk, endless discussions about weather, traffic, and schedules. Others try to rush straight into deep topics without establishing comfort first. Both approaches miss the mark. She stopped to pick up a smooth stone, turning it over in her hand. Meaningful conversation is like skipping stones across water. You start on the surface, but with the right touch and intention, you create something more beautiful than just a splash. The art of deeper conversation involves 3 skills: asking questions that invite reflection, sharing authentically, and following conversational threads with curiosity. Michael attempted to skip his stone, but it immediately sank. Eleanor smiled encouragingly and selected another for him. Most people ask closed questions that invite one-word answers. How are you? Fine. Did you have a good weekend? Yes. These create the illusion of conversation without its substance. What's the alternative? Michael asked. Open questions that invite reflection and reveal values, not just facts. Instead of, how was your weekend? Try, what was the most enjoyable part of your weekend? Instead of, do you like your job? Ask, what aspects of your work do you find most meaningful? The second skill is authentic sharing. When someone offers a glimpse into their world, reciprocating with honesty rather than deflection deepens trust. The third skill is following threads of meaning. When someone mentions something that seems significant, whether it's an accomplishment, concern, or interest, following up with curiosity rather than redirecting to your own experience shows that you value their perspective. They walked in companionable silence for a moment, the gentle rhythm of waves washing against the shore. There's something else that transforms conversations, Eleanor said finally. Something few people consciously practice, the art of presence through strategic pauses. Pauses? Michael questioned. Yes. In modern conversation, silence makes people uncomfortable. They rush to fill any gap with words, often missing the most meaningful moments as a result. A thoughtful pause after someone shares something important gives both parties space to feel the significance of what's been shared. She demonstrated by asking, what brought you here really? Beyond what your grandfather told you, what were you hoping to find? The question caught Michael off guard with its directness. Eleanor simply waited, her expression open and attentive. I guess I'm tired of feeling alone even when I'm with people, he finally said, surprised by his own honesty. I'm successful by most standards, but at the end of the day I wonder if anyone really knows me, or if I really know anyone else. Eleanor nodded, allowing another small pause before responding. That longing for genuine connection is deeply human. We're wired for it, yet modern life often works against it. The final element that transforms conversation, Eleanor said as they turned to walk back toward her cottage, is genuine curiosity. Most people listen through filters of judgment, comparison, or problem solving, but curiosity, real interest in another's inner world, creates space for discovery and deeper understanding. If you're finding value in these insights, please take a moment to give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might benefit. Your support helps this wisdom reach more people who are seeking deeper connections. Connection across differences. Building bridges, not walls. The next morning, Michael and Eleanor sat in her garden, surrounded by flowers that attracted several hummingbirds. Today, I'd like to address one of the most challenging aspects of connection, building bridges across differences. Michael nodded, thinking about the increasing polarization he witnessed daily. It sometimes feels like people are speaking completely different languages, yet the most meaningful connections often occur across those very differences, Eleanor replied. There's something powerful about being truly seen and accepted by someone whose perspective differs from your own. A hummingbird hovered near them before darting away. The key understanding is this: connection doesn't require agreement. It requires respect, curiosity, and the willingness to temporarily step outside your own perspective. The first practice is approaching differences with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. When someone expresses a view that differs from yours, curiosity asks, what experiences or values might lead a reasonable person to hold this view? That's hard to do in the moment, Michael said, especially with hot-button issues. It is. Eleanor agreed. That's why it's a practice, not just a technique. It requires the humility to recognize that your own perspective, while valid, is always incomplete. The second practice is listening for the values beneath positions. People with opposing viewpoints often share similar core values: security, fairness, freedom, compassion, but prioritize them differently or see different paths to honor them. The third practice is perhaps the most challenging: holding both respect and disagreement simultaneously. Many people believe they must choose between respecting someone and disagreeing with them, but genuine connection requires the capacity to say, "I see your humanity and value your dignity, even when I don't share your perspective." The fourth practice is finding common ground, not by minimizing differences, but by discovering shared experiences, values, or goals that create connection despite them. She turned back to Michael. "A bridge doesn't deny the reality of the gap it spans. It creates a way to move across it nonetheless." Similarly, acknowledging both differences and points of connection creates space for authentic relationship. The final practice is perhaps most important: remembering that connecting across differences doesn't mean abandoning your own values or boundaries. Some differences may indeed be too fundamental to bridge fully, and that's okay too. In a world that profits from division, Eleanor continued, choosing connection across differences becomes a radical act. It requires moving beyond the comfortable territory of us versus them, thinking into the more complex terrain of shared humanity. The connection practice, bringing wisdom into daily life. On his final morning in the village, Michael joined Eleanor for breakfast on her porch overlooking the ocean. "I've learned so much," Michael said, "but I'm concerned about maintaining these practices once I return to my normal life. Everything moves so quickly there." Eleanor nodded understandingly. "That's why we need to discuss implementation, how to translate these principles into daily practices that can withstand the pressures of modern living." She poured coffee for both of them. The first principle of implementation is starting small, but consistently. Many people make the mistake of attempting dramatic transformations that prove unsustainable. Instead, choose one or two practices to focus on initially. Perhaps committed presence in one conversation each day, putting devices away, making eye contact, and listening to understand rather than respond. Or perhaps a daily practice of authentic sharing, revealing something genuine about your thoughts, feelings, or experiences with someone you trust. The second principle is creating environmental supports for your practice. Our surroundings powerfully influence our behavior, often unconsciously. What kind of environmental supports? Michael asked. It might be designating certain spaces as device-free zones, scheduling regular check-ins with important people in your life, or creating visual reminders of your connection priorities. The key is making your environment work for, rather than against, your intentions. She took a sip of her coffee. The third principle is practicing self-compassion when you inevitably fall short. Connection is a lifelong practice, not a destination. You reach once and for all. There will be days when you retreat into old patterns, when fear overrides courage, or when busyness crowds out presence. Michael nodded, knowing his tendency towards self-criticism when he failed to meet his own standards. On those days, Eleanor continued, gentle recommitment serves you better than harsh judgment. Simply notice when you've strayed from your intentions, acknowledge the human tendency to revert to familiar patterns under stress, and choose to begin again. And finally, Eleanor said, watching the sunlight dance across the water, remember that genuine connection begins with how you relate to yourself. The quality of presence, vulnerability, listening, and response you offer to your own inner experience shapes the quality of connection you create with others. Michael considered this. You mean self-awareness is part of the practice? It's the foundation, Eleanor affirmed. The more attuned you become to your own emotions, needs, and patterns, the more authentically you can engage with others. Self-connection and other connection grow together. Your continued support helps us create more content like this. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Share these insights with someone who might benefit from them. The return home, transformation. Through practice before leaving, Michael asked Eleanor a final question. What's the most important thing you've learned about connection in your 80 years? Eleanor's eyes sparkled with the wisdom of decades, that it's available in every moment yet never guaranteed, that it requires both courage and tenderness, and that it's worth every ounce of effort, because in the end the quality of our connections determines the quality of our lives. As Michael drove back to the city, he felt both inspired and challenged. The principles Eleanor had shared seemed simultaneously simple and profound, obvious yet revolutionary in a world designed for distraction rather than depth. In the weeks that followed, Michael began integrating Eleanor's wisdom into his daily life. He started small, one device-free conversation each day, one question that invited reflection rather than a one-word answer, one moment of authentic sharing with someone he trusted. Gradually, these practices expanded, creating ripples of change. In his relationships, colleagues began to respond differently when they sensed his genuine presence and curiosity. Friends opened up more readily when they experienced his ability to listen without immediate solutions or judgments. Family interactions took on new depth when he created space for vulnerability rather than perfect appearances. There were challenges, of course. Some people seemed uncomfortable with deeper engagement, preferring the safety of surface interactions. Old habits of distraction and self-protection reasserted themselves during stress, but with each setback came the opportunity to begin again, to recommit to the practice of genuine connection. 6 months later, Michael found himself sitting in the same cafe where his journey had begun. The scene looked identical, people hurrying, past most absorbed in their devices, few making meaningful contact with those around them. Yet something had fundamentally changed. Where he had once felt isolated in the crowd, he now saw opportunities for connection everywhere. The difference wasn't in his circumstances, but in his approach, his willingness to be present, vulnerable, curious, and responsive in a world that often discouraged these very qualities. As he watched a young couple at a nearby table, clearly engaged in that modern paradox of being physically together yet mentally elsewhere with their phones, he felt a surge of compassion rather than judgment. They too were seeking connection, even if through means unlikely to fully satisfy that longing. Michael smiled to himself, thinking of Eleanor's parting words. Each genuine connection you create sends ripples far beyond what you can see. In a world starving for authenticity, your presence and courage might be the very gift someone else has been waiting for. With that thought, he put away his own phone, made eye contact with the barista, and asked a question that invited a real response rather than a scripted exchange. It was a small moment, perhaps insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but as Eleanor had taught him, genuine connection isn't about grand gestures or perfect execution. It's about showing up, one moment at a time, with the courage to be real in a world that often settles for less. And in that showing up, something essential is preserved and passed on, the art of human connection that transforms ordinary interactions into meaningful bonds and mere existence, into a life truly worth living. Thank you for watching this video on the forgotten art of genuine connection. If these insights have touched you, please show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing with those who might benefit. Your comments and experiences are valuable. To our community, we'd love to hear how you're practicing these principles in your own life. Until next time, remember that genuine connection begins with you, one authentic moment at a time.